I've been working, but it's different now, I guess. I mean, not the work. The work is the same. It's always been the same. I sit in the same cubed room, the same chair, and there's this light right above my head that always emits the same buzzing sound. It's so quiet, I doubt anyone else notices it. But I notice it. I'm next to it for hours and hours every day, and again the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. So no, work is the same and will always be the same, but I guess I've changed. In the buzz of the light, I hear the slip-slap of the children's feet. My thoughts wander away from me, but not aimlessly or formlessly like they usually do. No, they return again and again to the drudge, to my meeting with Brockett, to the darkness and the heat and the thirst. I feel like I've gotten into something I don't quite understand. Etta, you always were better at handling yourself than I was, but no. Miss each other again. We always seemed. Today was interesting. I was at work in another one of my dazes. The buzzing of the light was broken by footsteps, loud, confident footsteps echoing through my cement box. I tried to ignore them at first, but then a shadow was cast on my desk by the broad silhouette in front of me. I looked up and adjusted my glasses. The footsteps belonged to Brockett, smiling that smile that didn't spread to his eyes. He was more clean-shaven than before, but didn't take away the menacing edge from his animal smile. His gloved hand slammed onto my desk before I could stand. Good afternoon, Brother Jeremy. Brother. I hated the way he emphasized that word, brother. It was so saccharine, so seemingly friendly, but the way he wielded it always sounded like a weapon. So, this is where they keep you. His eyes went everywhere but my face, studying the shapes of the walls. I felt like I was being interrogated again, but I didn't say anything. Now, he said, I need to get a few things straight with you before we start working out our special transaction. See, the followers don't, shall we say, see perfectly eye to eye with the speakers and their edict. I need to know that you understand us. Whatever you need, Brockett. I said it too quickly. He needed to go. I needed him to go. What would people think if they saw him here? The quiet bank was quiet for just a heartbeat too long. His eyes found my face, and I felt completely consumed. The silence was eating me whole, until he gave a booming laugh. I looked around nervously for a moment, but soon was staring back at him and his imposing silhouette. Oh, it's not what I need. It's what Calescai needs. His voice suddenly went quiet, like still waters, but with something big and terrible churning beneath its surface. You are an amiable fella, aren't you, Jer? We just need you to know these words. He chuckled then. It was a sound like dust in an empty pipe. Now, repeat after me, and pay attention, Jer. Pay close attention. Pay attention I did, and I said the words like they're the first words I'd ever heard. As above, so below. For man is Empyrean, of the heavens, risen by man, for man, to serve man, who are all equal under its banner. We are made not to toil, but to rise. So say we all. I can't even remember saying the words, they just came out of me. But I could still taste them in my teeth. The taste was partially sweet. I saw for a moment again the black slick and the children's bare feet and that damn bucket of runoff, and I could taste for myself the freedom, the victory of those words. Not to toil, but to rise. Rise. It was that word that always turns bitter. What did it really mean? What did it actually entail? I didn't dare meet Brockett's eyes, and I stared instead at his clubbed fist resting on the counter. His smile was gone, and he simply watched me, looking deep in my face. He finally broke the silence. You'll receive instructions soon, brother. Then he laughed again, turned and walked out. The clacking of his steps slowly was drowned out by the buzzing light, which seemed so much louder now. Is this thing working? Shit. Come on. I need you to work. I need. I don't even know where to start. It's been days since my last recording. I blame it on the recorder malfunctioning, but I also need time to process, I think. To know how to explain. I went to the drudge. Like deep in the drudge. They sent me there. The followers, I mean. Those were my instructions. I was... If I'm honest, I was scared shitless. I am really afraid. Down. To get there, you just keep going down. Each layer's worse than the one before, Etta. I'd look up and I'd feel so alone because I wasn't able to see anything but the most indirect glow from Empyrean. On the second lift, it was even darker. On the third, I couldn't see Empyrean at all. I could barely make out the metal floor under the thick layers of dirt and grime. The machine shook and rattled and moaned, straining under the weight of its load. On the first lift, people would stare at me, angry or afraid, maybe. But then they stopped glaring altogether. They looked too tired to glare. I had a lot of time to think in the drudge. Something about the hollow halls and echoing chambers had given me space to parse out my thoughts. I keep asking myself a question. It's the same question. It's always the same question. It's been there for years. I'm pretty tired of asking it, honestly, but I feel more like at this point it's asking me. What went wrong? What did go wrong, Etta? I think I know the answer, but I don't want it. The answer, No. No, I need to face it. That's what I decided. The first 2 years of our marriage were surreal. Sure, we had our difficulties, what with you revoking your path and instead choosing to sing, but we worked through it. You and I would often sneak up to the windy rooftop to sit together, my arm over your middle, watching the other towers light up as Empyrean turned dark like a warm sheet above us. We spent so many evenings up there. Sometimes you would hum songs. Not your usual songs, the ones written to evoke feelings in others, no. No, these were nonsense songs, raw and aimless. A pure transaction of your emotions and the wind. An exchange, not an evocation, done only for yourself. And I got to hear it. I loved those songs. We continued going up there during your pregnancy. You didn't hum as much, but you sat near me. Even when we weren't touching, I could feel you, your proximity. The wind was cold, but we were warm. And when Alice finally came into the world, things changed. But for the better. It was like we found a piece of us that we didn't know we'd been missing. You laughed. You laughed a lot. Oh, you laughed so much, and she laughed with you. She loved the wind too. When the wind would blow, she'd stick her face out, her eyes would close, and she'd smile wide like she was flying. She was fearless. And things stayed like that. Things stayed like that for a while. I'll admit, I got used to it. I took for granted our intimacy and our family. I never once thought to hold on to those moments. I never thought that they'd be gone forever. Gods, I wish now I had. I wish I told you how much they meant to me. Maybe then, when those moments had ended, we wouldn't have lived. By the time I got to the fourth lift, Empyrean was completely gone. The only light was cast by blob-like rocks, a dark yellow-green light. The rocks were actually fungi, I think, grown and chopped up and polished into an effective little bioluminescent lamps. And it was hot, so hot. My smock clung in sweaty pools to my skin. I wanted to be done with this place, so I walked by with my head low, my pace as brisk as I dared. At one point, a woman with slumped shoulders met my eyes as I passed by, and she gave me a toothless sneer. Or grin, or maybe a grimace. I couldn't really tell. She made the regulars at the den look friendly and well-groomed by comparison, that's for sure. I knew I was almost at my destination because I'd found the fourth-level housing quarters that Brockett's instructions said I would. Or I thought I'd found them? It was hard to be sure because I couldn't really believe that this is what people's houses looked like. It was just a large room, massive, with ceilings so tall that lamps couldn't even break the darkness. We could tell there had to be a ceiling because of the thick metal beams that reached up into the black cloud. And between those beams, strung haphazardly, were patchworked and soiled hammocks. And that was it. That and the floor. That's all they had. A bell rang out so loudly and so suddenly I think I audibly gasped, but no one noticed. The sound was so bright, so clean, I felt wrong and alien here. Even the weakest of the people stirred, the children running away, flitting with excitement. I was so confused, but I was the only one. Everyone seemed to know this sound, and it seemed to be a good thing. I was thankful for the distraction, and I picked up my pace. It was still very dark, and it was hard to see exactly what was happening in the street. It wasn't until a child, a young boy so dirty he was almost indistinguishable from his black shorts, ran out of the crowd, that I understood. His smile stretched across his whole tiny face as he reached out and popped a bubble-like water portion into his mouth. And he barely stopped to follow it up with some kind of nutritional bar that looked like it could break his little teeth. My head was spinning. I didn't have time to ponder what I just saw until now. That was their food, Etta. That was their tiny portion of Empyrean, enough to sustain, but never to thrive. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. How can they live like that? There wasn't anything I could do, though. And it was the perfect time, the perfect distraction, so I left them there. I left the crowd and I followed my directions. Sure enough, I found a series of walls covered in markings. Some were made with paint, others were just grease or maybe worse. I didn't want to think about it. The markings covered older markings, which covered older markings still, some uncountable numbers of layers deep. I wonder how far back it went. I wonder how long these people, in this condition, how... I looked around, but I was alone. There's a large marking above me, by far the largest in this wall, and strangely untouched, unspoiled compared to the other graffiti. It was an arched slash above a pyramid, broken by a single upward stroke. I knocked 5 times, as I was instructed, and I waited. I found you on that rooftop once after Alice. It was a strangely calm day. I remember the wind was dead and the air had this stale taste to it. You were sitting on the edge of the building, your feet drifting towards the abyss and the drudge. You didn't hum, you didn't laugh, you just sat there with this blank look on your face. There was no fire in your eyes anymore. I didn't touch you. No, I stood behind for a few moments. I remember feeling impatient and angry in that stale air. I was bothered to see you sitting so close to the edge with your belly already large with Jessa. I thought you were being reckless. I waited for you to say something, to acknowledge my presence. But you didn't. I was invisible. So I snapped at you. I said, I need your tips from last night. The Menders are here to collect. I don't know if that was the first time I used that tone with you, but that's the first time I remember. I remember being so angry when you responded by aimlessly telling me where the credits were, without once taking your eyes off the horizon, without once looking at me. And so, I can't believe I even said this, but I remember saying, and stay away from the edge. You need to do a better job protecting your children. I've never said this out loud before, partially out of fear, or cowardice maybe, but I think part of me holds you accountable for most of this. If you had just decided to stay with your path, to just make the damned robes for the anointed instead of singing in some shady bar, we would never have had all those taxes and well, whatever. It's too late now. It didn't occur to me until now what you might have been doing up there. I think you were saying goodbye. Not just to Alice, but to the rooftop, to your transactions with the wind, to laughter, and you're saying goodbye to the man I used to be. The wall was actually a door. You'd never know it was so covered up with the markings. I guess that makes sense. I'm learning why the followers are so secretive. Why they have to be so secretive. I'm not quite so sure why they love the bags, though. There was a long wait, an awkward wait, but soon enough the door I didn't know existed was swung open and my head was covered up in another sack. I guess they didn't want me to know where they were going, to be able to retrace my steps in case I ever came back. It worked. 2 people grabbed me, their hands as tight as wires, and they took me away, bag over my head. Several minutes later, the bag was off. There was no glaring lamp this time. In fact, the room was barely more illuminated than it was when the sack was over my eyes. I took in my surroundings. We were in a small room, a cramped room. Thankfully, it was mostly empty. There's a makeshift desk with makeshift chairs, a small pad that looked like it might be used for sleeping, and a pile of stuff that was in the corner, mostly covered by a sheet. But I could see under the fold the corners of a box peeking through. It was a nice box. It was clean, well designed. It didn't look like it belonged down there in the drudge. And of course, the mysterious man. He sat at the desk, slightly hunched, sheets of paper with indecipherable lists and sketches on them, all around. He had a hood, and in the dark I could barely make out his face, but I already felt he was a stranger here. His face was round, calm, pale, somehow a bit childlike, but also old and wise. "You must be Jeremy," he said. His voice was so gentle, so kind. I didn't really know what to say. "I'd like to chat with Jeremy here, if you could give us a moment," he said to the thugs who brought me in. He spoke calmly, but assertively. His words were crisp and refined, articulated with a precision I've only known a speaker to use. The 2 looked back and forth, their brows furrowed. They obviously didn't think leaving this man alone would be a good idea. "It is only for a moment, truly. Now, please." He gestured towards the door in a gesture that said it wasn't a suggestion. They hesitated a moment longer, but finally nodded and left, the metal door thudding behind them. He took a moment before speaking again. "Don't mind them. They've lived a life without knowledge of kindness. They are owed understanding, at the very least." He smiled sadly at me. I didn't respond. Though I must admit, It is nice to not be the only outsider here, however briefly. Who are you? I sputtered dumbly. He emitted a quiet chuckle. Yes, indeed. Who am I? I am many things to many people. To some, most assuredly a traitor and a heretic. To others, a friend, an ally, a brother. Some insist I cannot be trusted. Some believe my sympathy makes me weak. I've yet to decide if I agree with them. His eyes sparkled in that dim light, and he gave me an almost whimsical shrug. But today, I am more concerned with who you are, Jeremy Ballard. I blinked several times, taking in his words. I couldn't tell, can't tell, if I like the man or if I despise him. Who was I? The cryptic conversation reminded me more of Brockett than I would have liked, but he and this man were still very different. So I said the first thing that came to my mind. I'm a banker. At this, the mysterious man laughed. Quite sincerely, I think. Indeed. A man of scores and ledgers, of numbers and calculations, of assets and debts. His eyes scoured me as he said that last word. I suddenly became aware of the sweat under my collar. Interesting. What is not clear to me is why a banker is here, in this place, speaking with me. I gulped. I suddenly didn't know why I was there either. This whole thing was preposterous and a really, really terrible plan. Had I seriously come this far down into the drudge just to have this ridiculous conversation? I paused. Jessa. Jessa was why I was here. A swell of unfounded confidence overcame me. As you said, I'm a man of calculations and debts. But if you ask me, at this I gestured towards the door to the thirsty, hungry, tired people outside. It's simple math that the time has come for these people to collect on what they are owed. He studied me in silence for what I think was several minutes. My own heartbeat throbbed under the damp restraint of my collar. Finally, he turned around and lifted a corner of that sheet. He carefully selected one of the finely made boxes, lifted it with both hands, and set it gently on the desk. This is a package more valuable than you can imagine, Jeremy, and more dangerous. It must be deposited at your bank for safekeeping. I slowly reached it out and touched its velvety, cool surface with a single finger. I looked back at him. That's it? His brow furrowed. Yes, that is it. But do not for a moment drop your guard. Too much is at stake. With this, he snatched the box from my touch and wrapped it in a dirty cloth. May the light of Empyrean guide your path. Awkwardly at first, I scooped the package in my hands and was surprised at how light it was. I stood for a moment, and I didn't know what to do. The mysterious man just watched me until I finally decided to bow. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. As I turned to leave, he spoke up. Justice is not an algorithm. You may operate in a world of numbers, but you must never allow people to become mere calculations. For your sake, and for theirs. I nodded, but I had no idea what that means. What went wrong? What went wrong is that Alice died. Alice died. And I was angry at her. I was angry at her for the change in you and for the change in us. So now when I ask myself that question, what went wrong? When I can't stop asking myself that question, now I have the answer. I did.
The Eighth Tower is a Harper's Farce production and is written by Jordan Gingery and Ricky Teal and produced by Ricky Teal. The voice of Jeremy is John Sanders. Music is by Harper's Farce. To find out more about the creators, lore, music, and other art, go to harpersfarce.com and be sure to find and follow us at Harper's Farce on all social media for updates and other news. As always, we appreciate you so much for keeping up with our podcast. If you haven't seen our new music video, Liminal, we invite you to check it out at our website. On that note, be sure to look at the codex. We're always trying to update it to keep up with the terms from the world of Calescai. We recently added a character tab to help keep names and details straight. If you have any other questions or ideas for further entries into the codex, please email us at harpersfarce@gmail.com. And now, it's time for the truth. When Sola became enraged by the schism between he and Lazar, his body became ensconced in flame. Only the most clever or hardy of beasts could reside on him. The cleverest of all delved deep beneath the surface to find within his raging form some semblance of the old god. There, within his darkest caves, were cool, dark pools of water where fungi grew. This fungus was named Mycota, and it sustains the wise.